Thank you, Mark. Very good presentation. I think that we have many questions here, but I will introduce, I don't have any doubt that biometric is a good opportunity to us to introduce more security in our transactions, but in the same way we can give a best service and a best quality to our customer as well. So we can balance the customer experience in this side. But on the other hand, we are seeing that some fintechs are becoming a part of our world. In this world, in this part, they start to capture and use the biometric in their world, and we need to consider that this biometric like a trustable authentication process. How you are seeing this at the world? How you are seeing the fintechs and the biometric that they capture and that we are using?
No, it's a great question, and there are, as I mentioned, there are a lot of biometric specialist firms out there. We've partnered with Morpho. I think a lot of the banks in the room have dabbled with some of these, but I think what our role is, how can we make sure that when biometrics are being introduced into the mobile device or some type of device, that there's adequate security and standards in place so that we have confidence as an industry that we can use these biometrics without creating a tremendous opportunity for criminals to get after them and to attack them and use them. So really what we're trying to do is just make sure that we have the right controls in place, and also to help partner with our clients for the best way to integrate these technologies into their experiences. But it's a good question, and it's early days, obviously, for this. We're going to learn a lot over the next 12, 24 months as we start to deploy more and more of these solutions. So.
Okay, there is other questions here regarding the opportunity to share the biometrics with the government. So there is two interesting questions here. The first one, if you have examples of countries where they are sharing information between companies and government, and which kind of biometrics they are sharing?
Yeah, that's a great question. At this point, the concept of sharing biometrics across entities and across governments and issuing banks, we have not seen it yet. And the reason why we haven't seen it yet is because I'm going to say that a lot of folks are nervous about having and managing a central database of all of these biometrics. And so there's a big debate going on as to what is the most effective way to deploy biometrics so that we can really protect this data. And what we're seeing first is this concept of local storage. And the local storage means if I have a biometric that I've loaded onto my card, it's only on my card, right? It's not going anywhere else. Or if I sign up for a fingerprint biometric on my Apple or Samsung device, it's only stored on that device. It's not stored anywhere else. There's no central database. And so we're seeing the local storage being the first implementations of biometrics, and that implementation doesn't naturally lend itself well to sharing because there isn't really that concept of a massive central database. So that's what we're seeing now. I don't know, I think maybe long term, once we get enough confidence that we can protect the biometrics, there may be more opportunities to share more, but right now we're not really seeing that.
And do you think that the quality, when you capture those biometrics, is an important piece?
Well, the quality is extremely difficult to manage because the quality of the biometric is dependent on the device that's being used to capture it. And so think of all the different consumer devices out there, all the different cell phones and mobile devices. You're dependent on the sensors that are being deployed in those devices from a quality perspective. And so fingerprint, for example, there are some fingerprint sensors that are fantastic at determining liveness detection, and other ones are brand new. And we should probably assume that some of them are going to have some bugs and some faults that the criminals will figure out. So it's a real challenge for the industry is how do we know at what point that device has enough maturity and technology in place to capture that biometric accurately. It's a real challenge for us though.
Perfect. There is other part of biometric that we causing a lot of discussion inside our market. This is how we will answer our customer complaints when probably we need to show why we decide that transaction approved or denied. So in some cases this is a huge challenge for us because we need to explain something that is really is like a mathematic approach to a customer to say, okay, this is you, this is not you. Maybe you have some experience from other places where and how they are managing this.
No, that's a good question. I think, to be honest, you guys are a little bit further ahead than the rest of the world since you've been using biometrics at the ATM. And really, no one else has been using biometrics at scale for payments yet. So you're really the ones that are providing insight into what are the true challenges of getting biometrics to scale. Because as you said, it's hard for the consumer to challenge a transaction if the bank sees their biometric was accurate. But as I mentioned earlier, all biometrics have a certain degree of inaccuracy. It could be just the way it was captured. There could be a number of different things. And so what we likely will end up doing long term is having probably multi-mode of modal implementations, whereby it's not relying on a single biometric, but it's maybe relying on a combination of things. Maybe if you're doing facial, maybe it's doing a combination of facial and iris. Because truly, if you look at the best biometrics, there's a certain error rate. And it means that sometimes the genuine consumer is going to be not use, it's going to be an error. And it's hard to explain that. It's hard for the issuing bank to even believe that. So it is a real challenge. I go back to, I think for those consumers who really have struggled with this and don't want to do this, we're trying to make sure that there's options for them so that they don't have to, right? So for us, and I don't know what you've done at the ATM, but from our perspective for using biometrics in mobile devices, for example, biometrics is an option, but you can still use a passcode if you prefer. And so I think that's really kind of how we would message around those consumers who have a real hard time believing and trusting and understanding this. It's really pitched as an optional convenience and security play, as opposed to a requirement.
Have you seen any case of you are facing on problems to introduce biometric because of legislation or something like this? You are seeing something in any place?
I don't think we've seen, not from a payment perspective. I mean, I think the legislators are always looking for a number of different things, I guess. In certain markets, two-factor authentication is a big deal, right? Particularly for e-commerce and remote payments. And so in Europe, for example, they passed a new law or some guidelines on that. And so I do think that because of government influence and potentially regulation on multi-factor authentication, you will see more biometrics being used more heavily in certain marketplaces, right? So once again, for e-commerce authentication, we have V by V today, verified by Visa, and a lot of you are entering a password. Well, you can easily see that password prompt being replaced with a fingerprint or a facial or an iris or some type of biometric. So in those markets, once again, whereby you have government guidelines on authentication, I think you'll see more and more adoption of biometrics just from a convenience perspective.
There's a question here from Marcelo from Bradesco. He's asking you about if you can give us some example if the payment industry is trying to create standards with the fintechs or other companies like Apple or Samsung that we could use around the world.
Yeah, so there are, as you can imagine, there are a lot of of open standards bodies focus on payments, and in particular, payment security and technology. And so there are a number of different initiatives that are in the works today. FIDO was mentioned. For those that don't know FIDO, it stands for Fast Identity Online. And it was really positioned as an organization that could help facilitate biometrics from a hardware standardization point of view. So I don't have any good specifics to share, but there are a lot of efforts going around globally into how do we create standards so that we can better adopt this quickly as opposed to piecemeal on a country by country, on a device by device basis.
Good. There's a difficult question here, I think. We know when we have any innovation, we have new problems, you know. In this case, this is a question from Luis Câmara. He's asking you, today, when you have identity theft, when you have a breach, usually issuers change the password or the customer card, or you block the social security number as well. The question is, how will be the process in case when you compromise the biometric database?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's probably the biggest question we get is if you're, as you mentioned, if your PIN is stolen, you can replace your PIN, but if your fingerprint is stolen, you can't replace your fingerprint. So it's definitely a valid concern, but a lot of our biometrics that we think are very personal are actually being left everywhere. Like any glass you touch, your fingerprint is being picked up, right? So in your face, if you're using facial recognition for biometrics, everyone in here probably has a Facebook or some type of social media whereby your picture is posted online. So in reality, our biometric data is often at easy access anywhere you go. And so really what we're trying to do is identify that liveness detection. So how do we make sure that the biometric, even if it was stolen, I can differentiate between a stolen copy versus the original. And that's really what we have to do. And we have to prove to our consumers that the technology is strong enough to embrace. And I think we're making some baby steps in that direction because as the mobile phone carriers are providing that fingerprint option to unlock your device, consumers are using fingerprints and they're seeing that it's convenient and it's really convenient, right? If I could use a fingerprint to access my mobile device, I'd rather do that than enter a password every time. So I think you're starting to see some adoption and some confidence from consumers about using it. And then I go back to the way it's being deployed now is largely on that local storage. So the only place that has my fingerprint is my iPhone. Apple doesn't have my fingerprint, just my phone itself. So it doesn't lend itself well to a mass data compromise. And so that's really what we're trying to do is how can we introduce biometrics in a slow and steady and safe way to bring all the cardholders along with them.
Thank you. If I can add a part of this answer, sometimes we can change a little bit the algorithm that you capture and then you authenticate that biometric, so you can manage this risk as well.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think what is also not well understood, let's say we're doing facial recognition as our biometric. We don't actually store your image in the phone. It's actually a template. And if you think about it, there's all these different connecting points on your face, and it's measuring the distance and angles between these connecting points. So it's actually a template, which is then encrypted. And as you were saying, if that template for some reason happens to be stolen, we can change encryption keys. There's ways to kind of repurpose that biometric. So there's all types of ways that we can protect that template and the data, but it still is going to be a challenge because it is a little bit of an arms race. The criminals are going to always try to stay one step ahead, and we're going to have to continue to invest in the technologies to as well, right?
We're moving to the end of our presentation, and I will ask you to give us some ideas and how will be the future, how you're seeing the future of this innovation, and in the few words, what should be in our minds in terms of strategy to use biometric in our business?
I do think that mobile is really going to be the key piece that drives all of this. So I don't think the focus on card is really going to pay off long term. And a lot of people are even thinking, well, maybe I put a biometric on my card, right? So I can turn on or turn off my card using the biometric, right? But that is expensive technology to try to implement when you can do a lot of that just through your mobile device. So I do think if you truly think of what is the most logical progression, focusing on mobile devices as your entry point into biometrics is likely going to be the winning strategy. And I think you guys will start to recognize this soon because the Samsung and Apple and Android Pay, they're going to be in this market eventually. And once you start to use it, you'll recognize it is convenient and it's a pretty interesting way to pay. So I think that would be the strategy. Okay.
Mark, we have other questions here. I will send you these questions and I think that you can answer after this panel. I would thank you a lot for the presentation and it's a pleasure to have you here. I think that all the people here could understand a little bit more the Visa strategy and your view about biometric and what will be our future. Thank you so much, Mark.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Por favor, Adriano, gostaria de pedir para a gente fazer uma foto oficial do evento.
Perfeito.
Virado para lá, por gentileza. Mark Nielsen e Adriano Volpini. Muito obrigada, Mark Nielsen e Adriano Volpini. Thank you very much.